What's up, my beautiful people? Hope you're having a terrific day. Exile451 here with yet another daily dose of Reddit Happy. We're going back into AskReddit for some funny stories again today, so sit back, relax, and let's get to it. Alright, so the AskReddit question was, mechanics of Reddit, what's the dumbest thing you've seen someone do to their vehicle? Now I'm gonna admit freely, I am not a car guy, at all. I know the basics, I know how to change my oil, I obviously know how to put in gas, but my knowledge of how cars work pretty much ends right there. That having been said, the things that some of these mechanics talk about make me look like a savantic genius. Had a customer once who had their oil light come on and couldn't figure out how to top the oil up. He thought it might have worked like his boat motor, so he poured a jug of oil in his fuel tank. And already we're off to a good start. I mean, dude. Oh, the list is long. Removing PCV hose, assorted vacuum lines, O2 sensor, etc., thinking they're going to get better performance. Cutting a wire under the dash to hook up a stereo, then bringing the car to me to fix the taillights. Pouring 3 quarts of oil in, but the dipstick still shows low because they put the oil in the radiator. Putting gasoline in a diesel truck. Again. I mean, dude, they're different nozzles for a reason. Oh my gosh. Did a co-op at a shop back in high school. Guy complains about how his car doesn't sit straight. We pull it in and don't even need to put it onto the lift to realize that he has 17-inch rims on one side and 15s on the other. Took me about 45 minutes of explaining to him why cars aren't made like that before he told us he'd be taking his business elsewhere. On a side note, the side with the 15s were 100% bald, like racing slick bald, and everything in that car was falling to pieces. I have too many stories of crap I found in people's cars there, but this one has to be my favorite. Why on earth would you think that... Why? I mean, why? Who is that stupid? Worked as a car cleaner at a dealership one summer in high school. Guy towed in a relatively new, top-of-the-line Corvette he had bought there sometime before I started. He was ticked that it had died on the road and been running like crap before that, ranting and raving about how he spent all this money and it only went X months/years before completely breaking down. One of my work buddies got it up on a lift and started looking it over. He opens the oil drain plug and nothing comes out. He pulls apart the engine, and the oil could now be best described as glue. Owner talks to the guy and asks when the last time he changed the oil was. Guy had zero idea what he was talking about. He had no idea that you had to do that. He assumed you just added gas and that's the only thing you needed to do. The engine was a complete loss, which meant the car was a complete loss to him. You know, it annoys the crap out of me how I can't ever go visit home without my dad being like, "When was the last time you checked your oil?" And yet, I'm never going to fault him for this again. If a guy will drop this much money on a brand new Corvette and is too ignorant about how cars work to just get the oil refilled, I really just don't have words. Dad, you were right. I will always check my oil from now on just to avoid being this guy. I was working at a performance shop at the time, approximately 2010. Golf GTI comes in for a lack of power and throwing check engine codes for underboost, and several for fuel trim management conditions. Did the typical process of checking the turbo wastegate operation, pressure and smoke tested the charged side of the turbo system for leaks, tested fuel pressures, all checked out. Removed the intake side from the turbo to inspect for rips in the rubber boot, all good. Looked inside the intake boot, and this moron bought one of those Turbonator gimmicky things and put it inside the intake. It had turned completely on its side and was restricting approximately 80% of the airflow. Removed the obstruction, and motor operating values returned to normal and power was restored. Did not feel any guilt that this idiot had to pay a few hundred for me to diagnose and remove his awesome DIY performance mod. This probably won't be the worst one in this thread. I used to know a 30-year-old who would put the car air freshener duct taped outside the exhaust, kind of just dangling in front of the opening. His logic was it makes the exhaust smell better for pedestrians. I mean, is it the stupidest thing on this thread? No. And frankly, you think about it, it's kind of considerate and way less tacky than a pair of testicles hanging off of a hitch. But I mean, guess it's the thought that counts. Bad snow day, and for whatever reason, we're open. Guy pulls in needing a flat repair. He pulled up in a way the car could be just pulled in. Coworker goes to pull it in and can't stop. Slams into his box. Wasn't going fast enough to damage anything. Car had 0 brakes. Say something to the customer. Oh, the foot brake? That hasn't worked in years. You have to use the hand brake. We inspect the vehicle and discover it doesn't even have brake calipers in the front, with the hoses clamped off and not an ounce of brake fluid in the master cylinder. And the most surprising part, they didn't want to get the brake repairs done. Dude! Dude! That's not funny, that's just horrifying. I mean, wow. Just wow. No, the emergency brake is not your standard brake. Oh my gosh. Did this guy get his license out of a cereal box? Not a mechanic, but we do almost all of our farm equipment maintenance. Brother called during a hellacious snowstorm, telling me, hurry, get over here and bring beer. So I arrive with Bud Light in hand, and he's got 2 lawn chairs under his carport. We get a beer and settled into our chairs out of the snow. We commence to watching his methed out neighbors that are higher than kites push this Mustang. They're trying to push start it. After about 10 minutes, we're hysterical. They had been trying for almost 2 hours. It was an automatic transmission. Okay, so I'll admit, I don't know cars well enough to know why that would be an issue, but obviously it is. The bigger thing to me here is, why on earth would you take a Mustang out in a snowstorm? I know this from personal experience because where I went to school, there was a lot of snow, and my first car just happened to be a Mustang. Snow plus Mustang does not work. All you end up doing is just gliding around on the snow and hitting a bunch of curbs. I mean, that's the bigger story to me. She didn't actually do anything. But a girl at my school noticed her check engine light came on and she wasn't sure what to do, so she started asking around. Teacher told her to take it to a mechanic and have them look at the engine. She goes, okay, where's the engine? Without missing a beat, teacher responds, that compartment in front of the passenger seat that opens up. Glove compartment. Really? The whole thing ended with a class trip outside to her car where the teacher opened the hood to show her the engine. She asks which thing in there is the engine. My poor teacher used to work on classic cars, and I'm very sure he wanted to die. I don't blame him. A customer brought their vehicle to the dealership I used to work at for an airbag recall. They had bedazzled everything on the interior dash, including the covers for the airbags on the steering wheel and on the passenger side. I'm not sure she understood the fact that airbags have enough power to turn anything into shrapnel. That is a homemade Claymore mine. But they would be one of the most sparkly, if not entirely recognizable, corpses that emergency personnel would ever have come across. Oh, finally, a chance to tell my story. I'll keep it short. Guy comes in with a Kia Soul for an oil change and mentions when he tries to pass people on the highway, the engine bogs down. Doesn't want to pay for diagnostics, so I just say we'll see if the visual check included in the oil change brings anything up. This guy put some aftermarket turbo kit in that was just a big fan attached to his throttle body. When he was wide open throttle, it would close the circuit and the fan would blast air into his engine. Only he wired it backwards. The fan would turn on, spin the wrong way, and the engine would starve for air. Not a mechanic, but I knew a guy who had a Mini Cooper who modified it to ride only an inch or two off the ground, without air ride suspension, to the extent that he would scrape on road reflectors. Needless to say, he had to replace a lot of his suspension every year or so. I worked at a Chevy dealer and now work at a Jaguar/Land Rover dealer. I'm not surprised at people's stupidity anymore. More than once, I've seen people add oil to the coolant reservoir, I've seen the inside of a motor where the customer never changed the oil since it was new, and the car had 50,000-ish miles on it. The dumbest thing I see every day is people come in with broke suspension parts, bald tires, and no brakes. They don't buy any of it and just want the oil change and insist we are trying to rip them off. But the same person will come in raising all sorts of hell over a small safety recall and refuse to leave until it's done because the car's unsafe. To play devil's advocate, there are enough shady mechanics out there that it's understandable why people might feel this way. I mean, just last month, my car had to be in the shop for about a week because of a broken intake manifold, and the mechanic I initially took it to, when I went there, I had no problem with my brakes. No sounds or anything else. They call me up and they're like, oh yeah, it's a broken intake manifold. By the way, your brakes are about maybe a month away from going out. And when I pick it up, sure enough, I'm starting to hear squeaks, they're not responding as well. I'm not making accusations, but something changed between my dropping it off and picking it up where the brake pads suddenly needed a replacement. Now, I didn't utilize them. We have a family friend who's a great mechanic, albeit a little hit and miss with the scheduling, who was able to do that, plus many other repairs that were needed for about $860, as opposed to the $960 that the original mechanic wanted for just the manifold, but still. There are just some mechanics out there that you can't trust. Oh, and the mechanic I took it to also said that the brake pads were 6 months out from needing to be replaced, not 1. So, yeah. I can understand why they might feel that way. I had a guy bring his motor-swapped late 80s F-150 in for some transmission work. These came factory with either a 300 straight 6, 351 V8, or 460 V8. He put a 2.3-liter carbureted 4-cylinder out of an old Ranger in it. The reasoning behind the swap was that it would improve fuel mileage at the cost of some speed. The thing could barely move under its own power. If you floored it, it would top out at about 55 miles per hour, wide open, and take a good minute or two to get there. Let me tell you about Diamond Plate Guy and Focus Bro. Diamond Plate Guy had 2 things he used to modify his truck: a drill, and a ton of diamond plate. It was an absolute base model V6 Ram 1500 with the exhaust chopped off, which I thought was bad enough, until I opened the hood. He had drilled or glued diamond plate to every flat surface. Air filter box, intake manifold, fan shroud, etc. This was 18 months ago, and my eyes still haven't recovered. But this isn't the end. He had some crappy wheels that he had painted white himself. I know this because he painted the inside of the wheel where it seats to the hub, which caused them to seize said hubs. I literally had to buy a bigger hammer to smack them off. Meanwhile, Focus Bro, this guy had a custom straight pipe, full Sparco race seats, 5-point racing harness, lowering springs, and a base model automatic Ford Focus SE. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, I don't entirely understand the second part, except for the fact he seems to be wanting a race car, whereas he's in a stock Ford Focus, which makes no sense to me. But OP here was kind enough to put a picture into another sub of what Diamond Plate Guy actually did, and here it is. Oh my gosh. Why? First off, no one is going to see it. Why on earth would you waste the time, effort, and money to do that? Secondly, why? Just why, period? Like, I just don't get some people. And it's not an essential car part. Why would you go tinkering with the engine to put something in there for bling no one's gonna care about? Oh my gosh. That was r/AskReddit, and if you want more funny or uplifting AskReddit content, then feel free to check out the playlist link in the description below. Now you guys go out there, have a great day. I will see you all tomorrow. Until then, I'm Exile451. Stay beautiful, people.